Hi friends, I thought we would do some behind the scenes in the studio. Just an informal video, as so many of my videos on this channel are, and I just love that. I don't have to do my hair, I don't have to do my makeup, I don't have to do anything. All I can do is just switch the camera on, start talking, and I love that. That is so good. But what I'm doing at the moment is I'm actually going to set up for a class that I'm planning to start filming either tomorrow or the day after, depending on when I get time to do that. So it's late in the day now. I like to do a little bit of setup the day before or whenever I'm going to start filming a new class, so that my time is better utilized on the day that I'm actually filming. I can just come in and basically start filming straight away. So I thought I'd share a little bit of how I'm setting up for this new class, the things that I need to do and the things I need to think about before that happens. And I will say it depends a lot on the actual complexity of the class. This class is not hugely complex. It's above beginner level, but it's not hard for me to implement and film this class. I'm comfortable with all of the concepts and everything that I'm going to be covering. So that means that the setup time is also going to be a bit more minimal because of that. So what I've done so far is I have woven a sample, tiny little sample, but very important because it told me exactly what I wanted to know, which was, did I have the correct heddle size for the yarn that I wanted to use? And were the patterns that I wanted to do going to be bold enough? And the answer to both was yes. Everything was good. And so I just used a tiny little warp and warped up and wove a few different variations on the sample, and it told me exactly what I wanted to know about the project. So then I can go ahead with confidence. I'm always talking to people about sampling, and I would be a cheat if I didn't do it myself as well. It's really important, especially when you're going to be teaching a class, because you have to know that it's going to work out. So the next thing that I have done is scribbled notes, and I've done, it's less than half a page of notes. Now the funny thing about me is, and my classes and my YouTube videos, is basically, unless it's a live webinar or a presentation or something a little bit more formal like that, nothing is scripted. And I do pre-planning obviously for the project to get the calculations and everything, but the pre-calculations are quite minimal because that's all I need. With my experience, it's all kind of in my head, it's ready to go, it's kind of set there, if that makes sense. So I don't need to go through every single calculation to make sure that it's going to work. So my notes are pretty minimal. They're things like the total warp length, the width on the loom, how many ends it's going to be, and then I already know the yarn and the set and everything like that. So I know that's not the way that a lot of people would approach these kind of things, especially if you're filming yourself and sharing with other people. But I think that's maybe a little bit of what makes my classes and my videos a little bit more natural, a little bit more relaxed feeling. And like I always say to people, I want you to feel like you're just a friend who's come over and I'm just showing you some stuff on the loom. It doesn't have to be formal or really serious or anything like that. So that is how I approach all of my videos, almost all of my videos. The next thing I had to do was to clear off my table here, which I've done. And I needed to measure out my warp to see, because I have, my tabletop is a billiard tabletop, basically with covers on it. So there's a billiard table underneath here, which makes it a really big table. Beautiful, beautiful for cutting and for so many things, for heaping junk on, which is what I do most of the time. But for cutting, like the quilt that I've been working on, this has been brilliant for that because I can just spread the whole thing out. It's really great. Anyway, so sometimes because it's at a more irregular length and width, it's not like a dining table size, it's much larger than that. Sometimes the warp distance is too long. And if I do it widthwise across the table that way, too short. And so I often have to bring in my warping board, clamp it on, and then do my warp that way so that I can bring the warp a little bit closer to the loom. I can still clamp the loom on the table, but bring it closer. This time I just measured out the warp and it's almost exact length that I need, which is amazing. That never happens. And you would think that I would know the total length of this by now, but no, these kind of figures don't stay in my head. I have to measure and remeasure and all of that. Anyway, that's okay. So the next thing I'm going to do is set up my loom, set up my warping pegs, because I'm going to use more than one peg, and a couple of other things so that I'm ready to film. I need to grab my loom off the stand. And then I just pop it here. It's easiest for me to warp the loom going to the warping pegs from this side. For some other people, it may be easy to do it from another side, but this is what I always do. And then I just got to clamp that on. Most looms will have holes all along the back, so you can choose whether you just want like one clamp in the middle or you can put one clamp either side. That's what I'm doing this time. Oh, would you look at that? I have clamped this room around the long way. That's weird. That never happens. Strange. Okay, I almost clamped my loom on backwards. One little clue, especially with an Ashford loom, for the back of the loom is this little shape right here. It's like, I think of it as like a bird's beak, and that should be pointing backwards. So yeah, that's the back of the loom. Don't clamp your loom on backwards. Deary me. So I have some spare clamps here. These are the ones that come with the loom. So I can afford to use more than one. And then for my warping pegs at the other end, I'm going to use my C-clamps, my spring clamps. Okay, so I want to clamp that on nice and tight. Then we will go to the other end of the table. So I'll just use my spring clamps, open them up. And as far as the placement of the pegs go, I just eyeball it. I want to have them spaced so that the warp is distributed across the loom pretty well. And yeah, I just eyeball that. So now they're ready to go. Something a lot of people do ask me is when I'm measuring out a warp, where am I actually measuring from to the warping peg? So for me, and this is a personal choice decision, I just extend out my apron rod as far as it goes, and then I have the brake on. Hang on, let's see. Yeah, so that's as far as it goes. Pop the brake on, and then I'll take my tape measure and I'll just measure from there all the way out to my pegs, and that's where I measure my warp from. I know other people do it differently. That's what I do. Now, the other thing that I wanted to show you that I have prepared here is that I have some of the warp marked out on the heddle already. I've gone ahead and I've done a check of the number of ends, the color arrangement, all of that. So that's all been checked and written down. So I've got those basic things ready to go. But to make the video, the class go more smoothly for me and for the student, I do a little bit of marking. So the first marker that I always have is the halfway mark on the heddle. That's just handy to have because you can count out from there or whatever. It helps to not have to recount. And then I've got some color placements marked out here and here. So these ones on either side, they're actually border threads. And then in between is going to be like the pattern threads. And I know that and I understand that. And in the class, I'll be telling my students to also mark those out. The next preparation is to have my yarns ready to know what I'm going to be using. So I'll be using 2 colors for this project. And I'm just going to pretty much sit them there until I come back and I'm ready to film, because I don't need to use them until then. I also have my warping stand down underneath the loom, and that's just going to make it easier for me to deal with those cottons that I'm going to be using because they're on a cone. And then the last things that I have ready and organized, well, here I've got my notes and my sample and a pen to jot down more notes. I'm going to need my threading hook, so I've got my double-ended threading hook, which is going to make warping nice and easy for me. I've got a good pair of scissors and my little measuring tape there. And then I've got a couple of shuttles. These are obviously left over from another project. So my last job before I finish up here organizing everything and getting it ready is just to empty these shuttles so that they are ready to take the new yarn. I do have to also grab my camera. I need to check things like how much battery I have on the camera. You can see I've got about half, so I know that I'm going to have another battery ready and recharged to pop in when this one dies. And also I just check through to see whether there are things that I can delete off the card to make more space for the new class. So that's all good, and I'll just leave that beside the actual loom. And then I'll get my sound equipment. If I need extra lighting, I can do that on the day, because as you can see, it's quite light in here today, even though it's late in the day. There'll be other days where it's just so dark and overcast that I have no choice but to use studio lighting. So that's always something that needs to be decided on the day. I have my rigid heddle stand just over here beside me. So when I'm actually finished warping here, I will put this loom back on the stand, and then what I normally do is I go over near the biggest windows in the studio and I actually film next to the windows. That way I'm more likely to get that really nice natural light, because even if I do have my studio lights on, the light's just not as pleasing. It's a different light. It looks artificial. It creates more shadows, it's more harsh and all those kind of things. Whereas natural light by the window looks beautiful. So I'll hope for a sunny day on the day that I do start actually filming this class. And if you are a member of the online weaving school, you can look out for this class. No promises, absolutely no promises as to when it will be done. It will be done before Christmas, okay? I can guarantee that. That's my goal. And it should be done well before Christmas, but you know, life happens sometimes. Things don't always go according to plan, but we will see. And if you're not a member of the online weaving school, make sure that you are signed up to my newsletter, because this class will be available as a single purchase class. So that could be an option for you. And before I go, if you enjoyed this video, having a look at what I do in the studio, a little bit behind the scenes, I think that you'll really enjoy this video. It's a kind of a day in the life studio vlog. And it's just an interesting way to have a look at some of the different things that I do each day as an online creator, as a weaving school owner, as a designer, and all those things. Okay, folks, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.